They came from beyond the world, from over the world, from under the world. They came from inside the stars and from behind the rain. They came from the known lands, and they came from the secret places of old. The vast ones who drank of the nebulae, the small ones who did not care what happened beyond the banks of their rivers, the ones who bathed in the light and the ones who watched from the shadows, the ones who loved us and the ones who forgot about us, the ones who hate us now and the ones who love us still, the ones who sung with the rats and the ones who swam with the leviathans. They came from far and near. They came one and all. They came to end the world. As you may already know from our previous video in this series, a mysterious being known only as the Harbinger unlocked SCP-001 The Lock and brought about the Omnipocalypse. Every single world-destroying XK-class scenario on the books, from Foundation files to the most ancient mythological tomes, and some we'd never even imagined, began to come true. A world flooded with terrifying anomalous activity, from unfurling skies to giant nightmarish animals, was about where we left off. Now it's time to open your eyes and wake up. This is the kind of nightmare you can't encounter while you're asleep. SCP-5720, the astronomically inclined crane, went about its daily work. The small mechanical crane always occupied itself with the one task that gave its existence any meaning: arranging esoteric model solar systems. But something was different today. SCP-5720 put the final touches on its latest model, and then lifted its mechanical arm skywards, pointing directly into the vast and starry infinity above. But were they stars? No, not today. As SCP-5720 looked up at the sky, this time, the sky looked back. They weren't stars, they were eyes. Something was coming towards Earth from the furthest reaches of the outer dark. An armada of world-enders, coming from above, below, and all around. A whole cosmos of supremely powerful beings, zeroing in on our pale blue dot. A thought crossed through whatever passed as the mind of this strange little crane.
Today is the day your prayers will be answered.
Followed by another word, ringing loud and clear and holy as a mighty church bell.
Awaken.
And at that moment, everything did. Thousands of miles away, a new god landed on Earth, appearing like a great wall of dense, matted fur descending from the sky. the mother of the ones that came before. After eons of absence, she had eventually returned to greet her children, the true rulers and stewards of this land. But was surprised and horrified by what she saw. Their great cities, their sprawling structures, their beautiful art and advanced culture, all gone, laid to waste by the worthless, hairless apes that once lurked in the forests with the other animals. Something had happened. Something had changed. The humans had slaughtered her people, destroyed their accomplishments, tarnished their legacy, driven the few that were left out of their kingdoms and into the forests, treated them as mere animals, and built their hideous concrete cities over their bones. And they had the gall to call them Bigfoot, or SCP-1000, because thanks to them, their beautiful true name had been lost to time. She looked skywards and cried out in despair and anguish at the loss of her children, inconsolable. But then she felt something, a glimmer of hope in her mind, the possibility that things would change, that the humans would be toppled from their thrones and true justice would be achieved. She called out to her remaining children, and her children answered. Across the globe, another great entity awoke, deep underneath a mountain. When it stirred into life and broke free, it shattered the entire mountain on top of it, as easily as you or me displacing a bedsheet. It took to the skies, massive but unseeable to the human eye. It soared through the air, gazing down upon the world it hadn't seen for thousands of years. Once it had feasted on the blood sacrifices of human subjects hoping to avoid its wrath. But humans weren't the petty little group of huddled cavemen that they had once been. Now they were in their billions, gathered in impossibly large settlements. The entity sought to find a seat of power that it could influence, but now it was spoiled for choice. Eventually, it zeroed in and found its perfect target, an SCP Foundation containment site. Here it would find a new form to take, and more petty, pathetic humans to bring under its mighty thrall. It landed in SCP-765, the Duck Pond. It is an anomalous pond that is, you guessed it, full of ducks, and initially induces feelings of serenity in its victims, before later inducing not-so-pleasant feelings. When the entity plummeted into the water, it began to absorb and bond with the anomaly, growing to epic sizes as it assumed a form that the minds of us feeble humans could comprehend. A giant, terrifying duck. It released a mighty earth-shaking quack as it plodded across the countryside to cause mayhem elsewhere. In Europe, more violent madness was unfolding. A crimson rooster cawed, then a golden rooster, and then a rooster of soot red. Anyone with a basic knowledge of Norse mythology was shaking in their boots as a mighty beast stirred in the heart of a desolate cave. The chains that had once held the monstrous dog in place now broke. It rose and licked its jagged fangs, excited to stain them with the blood of its enemies. It was the great hound Fenrir, omen of the end times, here to herald the end of all things. A trumpet boomed across the globe with no apparent source. People in the streets in New York, Delhi, London, Cape Town, and countless other towns, cities, and hamlets the world over paused and listened in confusion. Below them, the great and terrible Jormungandr, the thought-to-be mythological Midgard serpent, stirred from its previously eternal slumber and began to uncoil its body. The shifting caused earthquakes and tsunamis along the coast of Greenland, as towns and villages crumbled, killing thousands. Fenrir stalked along the length of Denmark, slaughtering and devouring anyone or anything unlucky enough to cross its path. But it did not wage its war against mankind alone. Behind it, a hellish army of burning giants marched, mighty hands clutching molten weapons. Ragnarok was upon us now. Odin save us all. And the administrator slept. She was the latest in a long line of Foundation staff members to hold that hallowed position. And in the dark vistas of her dreams, a predecessor approached her. He wasn't the old bearded man in the heavy coat that she remembered. Now he was wearing a 1950s suit and a fedora hat and carrying a briefcase. That's right, he'd taken up the mantle of SCP-990, also known as the Dream Man. He's a mysterious figure that appears to members of the Foundation in their dreams, warning them of impending disasters that they may be able to narrowly prevent if his warning is heeded, though it often comes at some terrible cost to the recipient of his message. This time, however, his message carried a different tone. He told the current administrator that there was no way to stop the apocalypse from occurring this time, only making sure that the particular shape of the apocalypse would be the one most favorable to the Foundation and humanity's joint interests. All this was devastating news that the new administrator saw as a grievous betrayal of both the Foundation's stances and humanity as a whole. She refused to accept the idea that the apocalypse was inevitable, even coming from the mouth of a former administrator. As far as she was concerned, this Dream Man no longer worked on the side of the Foundation. He was in league with the World Enders, and she refused to take his deal. The SCP Foundation would save this world from the horrors the Lock unleashed, or they would slide into the darkness with it. They would never work against the human race. SCP-343, also known as God, awoke in his cell in Site-17. The time for fun and games with the humans at the Foundation had come and gone. He was going by his true name, YAHWEH now. He blinked, and in that same instant, he was at Site-0, the containment site for another SCP-001, the legendary Gate Guardian. All the staff around them looked upon YAHWEH in shock, awed by the reality warper's sudden appearance and unable to do anything about it. But really, 343 was no mere reality warper, like some had expected. 343 truly was a god. He just didn't happen to be the only one in play. When the Gate Guardian saw YAHWEH now standing before him, he lowered his sword, spread his fiery wings, and took a knee in great reverence. YAHWEH spoke calmly, but with unshakable authority.
Uriel, it is time. Open the gate. Lead my armies across the earth.
The Gate Guardian Uriel responded in its booming voice.
I hear and obey, my lord and my god.
For the first time in recorded memory, The grand gate that Uriel had always been guarding opened, revealing thousands of legions of warrior angels waiting on the other side. They were impossibly beautiful and powerful creatures, each one a vibrant, glowing chaos of wings and eyes, wielding pure white swords and singing resounding hymns of war. Soon the air was thick with a chorus of rustling wings as the angels loosened themselves from the gate's mouth, led by Uriel as YAHWEH's general into the global fray. Meanwhile, back at Site 10, another SCP-001, the item that started all of this, the lock, was entering its next stage of grand cosmic evolution. Something within the lock suddenly unfurled, causing a shockwave that killed everyone at the site and destroying the entire building in an instant. Except in that same instant, all of the Site 10 staff and the building itself reappeared completely unharmed in a field in New Hampshire. Back where Site 10 used to be, the lock was doing some terraforming. The ground split open beneath into a mighty valley, the likes of which Earth had never seen before. Lush greenery sprouted within, and thousands of strange alien creatures soon populated this new place. In the center, the lock just floated in place. They were now ready for the first meeting to take place. Over at Site 2036, Dr. Everett Mann was working on a number of SCP-098 specimens. These are frightening creatures reminiscent of spider crabs, with blades instead of pincers and a natural ability to mimic the sounds of their prey. He was studying the creatures when he got a call, asking him if the specimens had acted up at all. They had already had sudden containment breaches for SCP-995, a type of dangerous carnivorous fungi, and SCP-616, a mysterious airplane with satanic elements to it. Just as Dr. Mann was about to reply, the 098 specimens metamorphosized into many winged flying creatures, which flew out of the chamber with such force that they busted through walls. Sirens blared all through the facility, and Dr. Mann joined the many other confused and frustrated Foundation staff members wandering the building, wondering just what the hell was going on today. They were getting bizarre reports of unprecedented anomalous activity from all over the world, with no explanation uniting it all. According to panicked whispers across the facility, Emergency Order Patmos was now in effect, whatever that meant. The true nature of what was going on here went over most of the heads of the SCP Foundation's staff. That's when Mann encountered Dr. Charles Ogden Gears, who, for such a famously emotionless man, looked surprisingly worried. Dr. Mann tried to downplay the situation, saying they were only looking at a handful of containment breaches here, nothing they hadn't handled before. Dr. Gears shut him down with trademark coldness. Feeling a little more nervous now, Dr. Everett Mann asked what else had gotten out. With steely eyes, Dr. Gears replied, "A whole damn lot." Now go check out Children of SCP-001, The Scarlet King. Is SCP-999 really his son? And SCP-001 Ouroboros Cycle, the full story compilation for more interesting explanations into SCP-001.